Hello and welcome to NewsX Deepdive. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. Today, an explosive trade report released directly by the White House has sent shockwaves through global markets, placing India squarely in the crosshairs of Washington's tariff enforcement radar. Titled The Great Transshipment Scam, Rise, Scope and Costs, the sweeping report authored by top trade advisor Peter Navarro accuses over 40 countries of forming a massive shadow transshipment network. The core allegation, well, that billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods are being rerouted, relabeled and laundered through third nations to evade heavy American tariffs. Tonight, we are unpacking the White House report, why India was placed in the Tier 1 risk category, what the controversial term ugly sister cities actually means for industrial hubs like Pune, Gujarat and Chennai, and how the US plans to deploy artificial intelligence now to police global trade. Well, the US has vowed to tap artificial intelligence to help detect and penalize such illegal practices. The report does not isolate a single region. It names over 40 economies across America's largest trading partners. Washington categorizes these nations into risk tiers. Tier 1 risk category includes India. Diversified scale leaders, India is placed in Tier 1 alongside Mexico, Canada, the European Union, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan and Israel. The report classifies these as large manufacturing economies where transshipment risks are deeply embedded within genuine massive trade flows, targeted trade corridors. Southeast Asian hubs, nations including Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia and Singapore are flagged for housing permissive free trade zones and cheap assembly hubs heavily utilized by Chinese exporters. Latin American and Caribbean hubs, nearshoring alternatives. Countries like Costa Rica and the Dominican Republic are also listed as intermediate staging grounds for rerouted Chinese manufactured goods. The most controversial section of the report introduces a new phrase into the trade lexicon, ugly sister cities. This is not a civic insult, but rather Washington's term for pairing foreign manufacturing hubs with American industrial cities that produce competing goods. The report singles out India's Pune, Gujarat, Chennai industrial belt and pairs it directly with the Cincinnati, Dayton, Columbus manufacturing region in Ohio, USA, specifically around the production of industrial pumps and compressors under the HS codes 8413 and 8414. Washington has argued that when Chinese components receive minimal value addition in Indian factories before export, it creates a zero-sum game that directly undercuts factory utilization and manufacturing employment inside the American Rust Belt. To counter what it labels illegal tariff evasion, the US isn't just relying on paperwork audits, it is turning to cutting-edge technology. The White House has announced the deployment of an AI-enabled enforcement system called Detective Border. Operating alongside US Customs and Border Protection, this AI framework integrates shipping manifest data, routing histories, corporate ownership structures, and computer vision at ports. It is designed to flag anomalous production capacity, detecting if a factory in a country is exporting far more goods than its raw material inputs or power consumption could realistically produce. It's important to note that the White House report clarifies that placement in Tier 1 does not mean Indian exporters are engaged in systemic fraud. India's growing role as a global supply chain alternative naturally means higher trade volume with both China and the US. However, as Washington deploys AI tools and tightens rules around substantial transformation, Indian manufacturers in sectors like machinery, electronics and auto components will now face far stricter origin checks. For Indian exporters, proving genuine local value addition is no longer just good business, it is a compliance imperative. Joining us live to decode this is Ambassador Bhashpati Mukherjee, former diplomat. Ambassador Mukherjee, what did you make of this bombshell report that the US has released?
Yes, indeed, Uday, it is a bombshell and it has several repercussions. The first being that we are in a group of very respectable countries, in my perspective, which includes EU, Mexico and Canada. And as far as we are concerned, we do have certain goods which we produce, which have Chinese components. We've never tried to keep it secret. That is part of the entire issue of changing global supply chains, which even the Americans have not been able to achieve in a quick period of time. Changing global supply chains takes time, particularly in an emerging economy where you do have large sectors totally dependent upon the government to ensure that their earnings don't drop. So if that means that you have to change from a Chinese component to another component, that is definitely going to take time. At the same time, as far as trade and manufacturing is concerned, there has been an attempt on both China and India to try and patch up from the very bad relations of 3 years ago as far as trade and manufacturing is concerned. My worry is, even though we are in tier 1, where does that place that famous free trade agreement that has been finalized for months and is waiting for President Trump's nod so that it can be signed? Will it impact, which I'm sure it will, the free trade agreement which has been based on concessions on both sides and which enjoys intra-party agreement across the United States? And finally, the issue here is that can a sovereign country, be it India or any other country, be subjected to this kind of bullying, public bullying, that we will not accept your good because in this particular good we have checked through artificial intelligence or whatever that you have a Chinese component. In that case, where does that place the relationship of United States with China, which is constantly chopping and changing, like the famous conflict of Trump with Iran? The relationship with China, one day it goes up, one day it goes down. When he is doing this, he is actually then trying to destroy the fundamentals of the Chinese economy. How are the Chinese going to take it is the most important question. How are they going to react? He is saying that any country which uses any Chinese component in its supply chain, which then gets exported to the United States,
Yes.
that country in the middle that is using the Chinese component is violating US law. We are in tier 1 where we have not been directly blamed.
Yes.
But the point here is, how can we be publicly bullied in this manner?
Okay.
How
But now what comes next? Because so far, of course, they have indicated that they plan to use AI tools to prevent this, of course, but no other measures yet have been spelled out. What could be coming next for the tier 1 countries, Ambassador Mukherjee?
Point here is that Trump seems to forget that many of the stuff that comes from India is of direct benefit to his MAGA base. He realized that when the price of Indian antibiotics shot up to an astronomical rate because of tariffs that he had put on them, which did not affect India, it affected the people who use those antibiotics in the United States, including his MAGA base. Now, in this particular case, if he is going to come down heavily on us, it will result, A, in it impacting or delaying the free trade agreement, and B, we will once again have to scramble and look for new markets for some of these products, which may definitely have a Chinese component. We've never denied it. There are certain goods produced in India with Chinese components because we don't yet produce them, or it is cheaper to get it from China and then export it. I mean, this is normal part of trade, free trade. I mean,
Yes.
What is happening is that Trump and his administration is turning global trade and its rules on its head.
Okay. Okay. Ambassador Mukherjee, thank you. Thank you for joining us with your perspective on this segment.